Two people, same company, same start date, same job title, same $52,000 salary. I'm going to call them Coworker A and Coworker B because this isn't really about them. It's about you. They sat 2 desks apart for 10 years. Same raises, on the same schedule, same benefits package, same 401k match, same health insurance, same annual bonus structure, same everything, down to the dollar for an entire decade. 10 years later, one of them retired early from that same company with over $340,000 sitting in investments, completely debt-free, house paid down, on track to never seriously worry about money again. The other one is still there, still working the same desk, still living paycheck to paycheck, still 1 car repair away from a credit card balance he can't pay off by the end of the month. Same paycheck, same benefits, same company, and a gap of almost $340,000 between them. If you've ever looked at someone with the exact same job as you, same income, same opportunities, and wondered how they seem to be quietly pulling ahead while you're standing still, this video is for you. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, year by year, and the one number that quietly created that entire gap. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly where you stand on that same timeline right now, today. And if this kind of breakdown is useful to you, subscribe. This channel is entirely built around showing you the real math behind money, not the guesswork, not the hype, and not the get-rich-quick nonsense. Let's start at year 1, because year 1 looks completely identical. Both of them get hired at $52,000 a year. Both get the standard onboarding packet. Both are automatically enrolled in the 401k at 3% with a company match of up to 4%. Both open a starter checking account at the same bank that the HR department recommends. Both move into apartments around the same price point in the same part of town. On paper, in year 1, these two people are financially indistinguishable. If you looked at their bank statements side by side with the names blacked out, you would not be able to tell them apart. But there's one decision that happens in month 2 that neither of them thinks twice about, because neither of them realizes it's a decision at all. Coworker A bumps his 401k contribution from 3% to 6%, just to fully capture the employer match. It costs him about $87 a month in take-home pay. He barely notices it disappear from his paycheck. Coworker B leaves his at 3% because 6% feels like a lot right now. He's got a new apartment, a new-to-him car payment, and he wants breathing room in his budget. That's it. That's the entire divergence point. Not a big, dramatic financial event. Not a lottery ticket. Not an inheritance. Not a secret investment tip. An $87 a month decision that neither of them thought was important enough to think about twice. By year 2, the accounts are basically indistinguishable to the naked eye. Coworker A has around $4,200. Coworker B has around $3,100, a gap of about $1,100. If you asked either of them how their finances were going, they'd both say fine. Neither one is stressed. Neither one is celebrating. This is the most dangerous phase of the whole story, because nothing about it looks urgent. By year 3, the gap is small enough that you'd need a spreadsheet to see it clearly. Coworker A has about $9,400 in his 401k. Coworker B has about $5,100. A $4,300 difference feels almost irrelevant when you're 27 years old with your whole career ahead of you. Coworker B isn't worried. He's got a reliable car, a decent apartment, and he's not carrying credit card debt. From where he's sitting, he is doing fine. and he is doing fine. That's exactly what makes this so easy to miss. Here's the number I promised you at the start. The one that quietly built the entire gap. It's not really the $87 a month. It's what that $87 a month does when it's left completely alone for a decade, inside an account earning compounding market returns, instead of sitting in a checking account earning nothing at all. By year 4, coworker A crosses $18,000. Coworker B is sitting around $10,500. The gap has grown to roughly $7,500. But here's what's changing underneath the surface. A meaningful chunk of coworker A's balance is no longer money he put in. It's money his money made. That's a distinction almost nobody notices until much later. By year 5, something starts to shift in a way you can actually feel in the numbers. Coworker A's account isn't just bigger, it's growing on its own now. His balance is around $31,000, and more than $6,000 of that came purely from investment growth, not contributions. Money he never worked for, generated entirely by money he'd already set aside years earlier. Coworker B, still contributing at 3%, has about $17,000. The gap is now $14,000. Noticeable, but still something you could explain away as he probably just makes smarter budget choices than me, or he's just more disciplined. Remember, same paycheck, same benefits, same company. This was never a story about who earned more. Year 6 brings a small raise for both of them, identical in percentage, and both of their contribution rates stay exactly where they've been since month 2. Coworker A's balance climbs past $45,000. Coworker B crosses $23,000. The gap has more than doubled from where it stood at year 5, not because either of them did anything dramatically different, but because compounding accelerates the longer it's left alone. Year 7 is where the story usually turns, because this is where real life happens to both of them. Coworker A gets married, buys a modest starter home, and critically doesn't touch his 401k to do it. He adjusts his spending elsewhere, cuts back on dining out for a year, and keeps his contribution rate untouched. Coworker B, meanwhile, has a rough stretch. A medical bill, a car breakdown, and a layoff scare at a neighboring department that didn't actually happen to him, but caused him to run up about $6,000 in credit card debt, just in case. He starts paying 22% interest on that balance, while his 401k sits frozen at 3%. Exactly where it's been for 7 years. This is the pattern interrupt most people don't expect. Coworker B isn't lazy, and he isn't bad with money. He's making completely reasonable decisions under real pressure, the same decisions almost anyone in his position would make. But every one of those decisions moves further away from compounding, and every one of coworker A's decisions, even the boring ones, moves closer to it. Two reasonable people, two completely different trajectories, and neither of them can see it happening in real time because it's happening one ordinary month at a time. By year 8, the gap has become impossible to explain away with budgeting differences alone. Coworker A is closing in on $140,000. Coworker B, after 2 years of paying down that credit card debt, has finally gotten back to zero balance. However, his 401k still sits under $35,000 because none of his extra income during those debt payoff years went toward increasing his contribution rate. He solved the emergency. He never solved the underlying gap. By year 9, coworker A crosses $200,000 for the first time, and the growth is now visibly outpacing his own contributions. Coworker B is around $48,000. The two of them are still getting the exact same paycheck, still sitting 2 desks apart, still eligible for the exact same benefits. But one of them is beginning to have a fundamentally different relationship with his job. He's starting to realize he has options that the other one doesn't. By year 10, The math has fully separated. Coworker A's account has crossed $340,000. His original contributions only account for about $95,000 of that total. The rest, nearly $245,000, is growth. Money that multiplied on its own while he lived an otherwise completely ordinary life. He didn't get a windfall. He didn't take on huge investment risk. He didn't pick a hot stock. He just gave compound growth 10 uninterrupted years to work, starting from month 2 of his very first job. Coworker B's account sits at just under $61,000. He's debt-free again, which is genuinely good, but he's 10 years behind on the one thing that actually builds long-term wealth. He makes the exact same salary Coworker A does today. They both got the same raises, remember? On the same schedule for a decade. But one of them has options, and one of them doesn't. One of them can realistically retire early if he chooses to. The other one has to keep showing up to that same desk at that same company for years longer than would have been necessary. Same paycheck, same benefits, same company. A gap of nearly $280,000 in outcome, built almost entirely from a single decision made in month 2 of year 1, and the 10 years of uninterrupted compounding that followed it. Here's the part that actually matters for you, sitting here right now. This isn't a story about needing to make more money. Coworker A never out-earned Coworker B. Not once in 10 full years. This is a story about the fact that the earliest, smallest financial decisions you make are the ones with the most time to compound, which means they're worth disproportionately more than the decisions you'll make later, even when they feel disproportionately small in the moment you make them. If you're early in your career, the number that matters most isn't your salary. It's the percentage of that salary you're putting somewhere it can grow, starting today. Not eventually, not once I get a raise, not once things settle down. An extra 3% right now is worth more than an extra 10% 10 years from now, purely because of how much time it has to work. And if you're not early in your career, if you're closer to Coworker B's position right now than Coworker A's, the lesson here isn't it's too late for you. It's that the version of you 10 years from now is standing exactly where Coworker B is standing today, looking back at this exact decision. The gap didn't close for him because he never went back and adjusted the one number that created it in the first place. Yours doesn't have to go the same way. So here's the milestone to actually take from this video. Not save more in some vague sense, not budget better as a general resolution. One specific, concrete action. Find your current contribution percentage today, this week, and move it up by even 3 points. The same 3 points that separated these two coworkers for an entire decade. You don't need a windfall. You don't need a raise. You need 10 uninterrupted years and one decision you make today instead of eventually. There's one more piece of this that's worth sitting with, because it's the part that trips up almost everyone who hears this story for the first time. It's tempting to look at Coworker B and think the fix is obvious, that if he'd just seen the numbers earlier, he would have made a different choice. But that's not really what happened. Coworker B saw his account balance every single year. He had access to the exact same statements Coworker A did. The information was never the problem. The problem was that $87 a month never felt urgent enough to act on, because the cost of not acting doesn't show up as a bill. There's no notification that says you just lost $4,000 of future growth by not moving your contribution rate this month. The cost is silent, and it's spread out over a decade, which makes it almost impossible to feel in real time, even though it's completely visible in hindsight. That's really the trap underneath this entire story. Every individual month, staying at 3% looked like a perfectly reasonable, low-stakes decision. Nobody would have told coworker B he was making a mistake, because in any single month, he wasn't. He had a functioning budget, a car that worked, and no debt for most of that period. The mistake only exists when you zoom out to 10 years, and almost nobody zooms out. We evaluate our financial decisions month to month, but compounding only rewards you on a timeline of years. That mismatch between how we naturally think about money and how wealth actually gets built is the real reason this gap exists for so many people. Not laziness and not a lack of income. It's also worth saying plainly, none of this required coworker A to be smarter, more disciplined, or better with money in any general sense. He didn't track every expense. He didn't cut out coffee or lunches. He didn't live some extreme, restrictive lifestyle for 10 years to get here. He made one adjustment in month 2 of his very first job, and then he simply didn't touch it. That's the entire strategy. Set it once, early, and let a decade of time do the rest of the work for you. If breakdowns like this, the real math behind why some people build wealth on the exact same paycheck as everyone else around them, are useful to you, subscribe. This channel exists to show you the numbers nobody bothers to explain to you until it's too late to use them. And if you've got a coworker, a friend, or a sibling who seems to be quietly pulling ahead on the same income as you, drop a comment below and tell me what number you think is actually separating you from them.